And welcome into the Radio Days edition of Now and Next. This week I got a chance to sit in with Jim Richards on Newstalk 1010 in Toronto.
I can't believe, and I just see on CP24 as we are inviting our friend Dave Trafford, who, if you do not know, hosts a fantastic show. He is also the executive producer of Story Studio Network and the host of The Ledge, Your Ontario Politics podcast. It is a fantastic show. They have 900 people who contribute to it, but all voices from every corner of the political spectrum. That's why I like it. We wanted to talk to Dave about the fact that there no longer will be the ability to, or the government is going to insulate itself from FOIs, which means freedom of information requests, which is how the journalism is done on a lot of important stories, not just on Doug Ford, but on Dalton McGuinty, where things blow up. But it was my understanding that Cabinet already had a certain amount of protection. But now to come out with this, and we learn that it's going to be retroactive. I don't know what that means when you talk about the Greenbelt and skills development. This sounds like something that people should be angry about, but the government tells us as if this should mean anything to you when your parents told you, well, just because little Johnny is doing that, would you jump off a bridge as well? That brings us David Trafford to the show, who's never jumped off a bridge. But David, we're hearing, well, other provinces do it. I don't really care. And I was hoping that this would be a bigger story into this week. Dave, should we be concerned?
Just because it's in line with other jurisdictions doesn't mean it's a good thing. You're right, Jim. The fact of the matter is the Freedom of Information Act and legislation across the country is, at best uneven. It's not consistent in any form or fashion. There's nothing behind it that says that, if you and I submitted the same request, it would be interpreted the same way in terms of what was, it could be excluded, what would be redacted, all of those sorts of things. So it's already kind of dicey. I talked to Dean Beebe, and Dean is he's the wizard of FOIs. The guy made a career at Canadian Press basically doing this, and he would come up with FOI submissions, 3-4 times a week. And inevitably, he would land on some big stories, and he chased and he broke all kinds of stories for the Canadian Press over the course of his career. A couple of weeks ago, I saw his piece on Substack, and it talked about the federal government and their reporting on freedom of information, and indicated that fewer and fewer Canadians were actually making the submissions. A couple of reasons. First, it's just so onerous. The second thing is that most of it we were getting back was redacted, so it really wasn't all that effective. And so he was lamenting the fact that even though we're getting fewer and fewer requests, the costs for administering FOI was going through the roof. So they're bending over backwards, Jim, in all these other jurisdictions that Ontario now wants to replicate to make sure that we don't get any access to any kind of the public information, and they're spending more money to make sure we don't that doesn't happen. So I guarantee you that's going to happen with the Ford government, which is they don't see a dollar they don't want to spend anymore. So you guarantee they're going to be setting up a whole new bureaucracy here to make sure that you and I are kept in line. We're not going to get the information to that access to that information.
But governing bodies police forces that are doing like the OPP on the Greenbelt, that wouldn't affect them, right? That would just affect a journalist from getting a story. We've seen so many journalists, though, that have been the impetus for greater oversight.
Oh, completely. I mean, the Skills Development Fund story, everybody at Queen's Park has been following it and doing good work on it. But, the work that they've done at the Trillium, for example, they were working on FOI requests a year ago almost, and they had it all set to go, pulled the trigger on the story around the same time that I think it was the Integrity Commissioner or the Auditor General, I can't remember which one now, came up with their report in the fall, and boom, they were out in front of it already. So they knew what was going on with the Skills Development Fund. They had all the questions in line, and quite frankly, they fueled about 2 weeks worth of opposition questioning in question period that held David Pacini's feet to the fire to say, who was getting this money? Why were they getting this money? What kind of influence did you bring to it? If they hadn't done that reporting, that story never would have seen the light of day. Yeah, it might have made a bit of a ripple, but really not to the extent that we know it's a problem, not to the extent to which now the OPP is involved.
To the extent that we would know that the company that gets the spa down at Ontario Place wasn't much of a company. If people do not know, they're claiming, yeah, we're this big spa company and we're very successful. They didn't have much of success until they got the Toronto spa. And that's, some stuff that was done. I don't know if it was FOI, but it was some great reporting.
Clearly. I mean, and that kind of deep reporting is a problem. And you know as well as anybody the state of the industry in terms of journalism and newsrooms. It's very difficult to have enough resources to get the news out on a daily basis. The days of having somebody sit down and fill out the FOI requests are, long gone in terms of that being a routine. So this is all kind of coming together in terms of the ecosystem that makes it more difficult to get this information, and now the government basically creating this shield of scrutiny that doesn't let us even make the request. They're exempt from that information.
It's amazing too that the Conservatives would have loved this when Dalton McGuinty was in power because of the gas power plant scandal and all that kind of stuff. But as soon as you're in power, you want to be protected from it. So that's why I don't know if dangerous is the word, but I do think it's an important story and people should be outraged at it.
Well, here's the other part of this issue, and you pointed out the retroactivity of this. Ryan Amato is the former chief of staff of the housing minister, Steve Clark, at the time of the Greenbelt. And now 2 years ago, Clark had to step down. He had to quit his post as the minister because this thing was gaining such heat. Again, a lot of FOI information had come out and reporting was being done around it. Now, Amato is being told, well, you need to hand over all the communications, and they're fighting it because he's saying it was on my personal Gmail account. That makes it all the worse. But right now, we're kind of looking at the same sort of thing with the Premier's phone. The Premier doing all of this business on his personal phone, then that's government business. That's the business of you and me.
Yeah.
Now, today, he's talking about, I got to do it. I've got to protect my constituents. It's confidential. And we're also now making sure that we're protecting ourselves against the Chinese communists. I mean, seriously.
And this doesn't include the police, right? If the police wanted to, this OPP investigation, they get to see whatever they want to see, no?
Sure, they could get subpoenas and warrants and do the things legally, and same thing with the integrity commissioner, the privacy commissioner, and so on. But let's remember that a lot of the accountability offices are working on complaints that came out of FOI submissions, right? So the opposition would have said, we did this FOI, we think that there's evidence here. They present it to the privacy commissioner, the integrity commissioner, the auditor general, whoever it is, and that begins to be the seed for a review of what's going on. So some of those reports may never have happened without FOI.
All right. Dave Trafford, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Jim. Now and Next is an Eye Contact production.